Welcome to my scientifically informed insider look at mental health topics. If you find this video to be interesting or helpful, please like it and subscribe to my channel. Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I want to answer a question I received about narcissism. Actually, I received a few different questions, and I've seen a lot of questions where people are asking, is there some simple way to detect either trait narcissism or narcissistic personality disorder? That's the disorder in the DSM that has different narcissistic characteristics. Well, the short answer is no. These constructs are fairly complex, and a lot of different characteristics have to line up to lead to somebody having trait narcissism or to have the disorder. But there are some different elements I think indicate narcissism more strongly than others. So I guess you could say this video is really about what's the core of narcissism, in my opinion. So I thought I'll answer this question. It's not going to be a perfect answer, but it's going to open up a lot of opportunity for discussion. That's the plus side. Now, a lot of times what happens here is people look at the symptom criteria in the DSM because, again, there's some similarity, of course, between NPD, the disorder, and narcissism. And they'll say, well, the best indicator is that first symptom criterion, a grandiose sense of self-importance. But my challenge to that would be, how is that observable? How do we know that somebody has a grandiose sense of self-importance? Now, there may be a lot of ways, but a lot of those examples of what points to that grandiosity are actually already symptom criteria in the definition of NPD. A sense of entitlement, feeling special, jealousy, arrogance, lack of empathy. If we take these things together and somebody met all those symptom criteria, oftentimes we would say, well, those mean that we have a grandiose sense of self-importance. So I'm not really happy with that symptom criterion as something that's easy to spot, but it does point strongly to narcissism. The problem is it's a higher level construct. It's a construct made up of other characteristics. Well, then I hear the argument about sense of entitlement. Well, if somebody believes they deserve more than somebody else, they deserve admiration, that's also a symptom criterion, then that makes sense as a clear indicator of narcissism, right? That deserving something that somebody clearly doesn't deserve does seem like it's very tied in with the core of narcissism. I've also heard the same argument about jealousy and arrogance, especially the condescending component, and lack of empathy and manipulation. But I view lack of empathy and manipulation more as something that happens because somebody is narcissistic, rather than being at the core of narcissism. Now, one of the lesser known or less mentioned symptom criterion is fantasies of success, wealth, power, and the ideal love. And I've always thought this is actually a fairly good indicator of narcissism. Not perfect, though, and not always easy to detect, although sometimes it can be. So I was reading this article not that long ago about the dark triad. It was written by Jones and Paus. I'll put the reference to that article in this video description. And I was reading this article. It was about the dark triad. Of course, narcissism is one of the dark triad traits, so is psychopathy and Machiavellianism. And one of the studies in the article, one of the experiments, was dealing with deception and narcissism. So it got me thinking about my two favorite indicators of narcissism, the fantasies of success and power and a sense of entitlement. What do they have in common? So I came to this conclusion, just my opinion of course, that the core of narcissism, if I'm going to really simplify things here, is self-deception. If somebody can deceive others, that's one type of deception. We see that with psychopathy and really a lot of different traits we see that with. But to lie and to start to believe the lie yourself is really highly consistent with the sense of entitlement, again, deserving something that other people don't deserve. It's not logical or reasonable. And it's particularly strongly tied to fantasy. A lot of times when people fantasize, they have to, at least at a small level, a small degree, believe that the fantasy can be true or could come true. And this is a form of self-deception. I'll use this example. I like sci-fi movies, and I like pretty much all the Star Wars movies. So if you go in to watch a Star Wars movie, you do it to be entertained. And the people that make the movie, they know that the movie's not true, and when you go in to see the movie, you know it's not true. You don't believe that there are really people fighting in outer space with lightsabers, but you go in and you suspend your disbelief. This is really, of course, a core concept in terms of enjoying movies. So, to some degree, the people that make the movie and you enter into this agreement where you're going to suspend disbelief. You're going to tell yourself a lie and then start to believe it, just for the purposes of being entertained. I think when this same construct is taken to an extreme, this really points to narcissism. This is the self-deception that would rise to a narcissistic level and lead to fantasies that people are much more invested in. If you think about the fantasies that narcissists have, again, at some level, they really believe that it could happen. They may know it probably won't happen, but I think they need to believe it can happen. So for the second part of this test, in terms of the narcissistic core, is self-deception, even if it is at the core of narcissism, is it observable? Can you tell when somebody's lying to you and they're believing the lie as well? Well, this is a fairly good challenge. The answer is I don't know. I think most people, if they have a lot of time with somebody, can probably tell when self-deception is going on. It does have a different feel to it than just deception for some sort of instrumental purpose. Like if somebody is trying to lie to you to get money from you, or to get something else material from you, that's usually transparent, we would hope, right? We would hope we could detect that and say, no, I'm not going to allow you to take my money or whatever. But if somebody's talking about something more narcissistic, more grandiose, like they're inflating their grades that they got when they were in school. So they say they were a straight A student, but you happen to know that they were a straight C student. Well, how does this hurt you? How are they trying to get something from you? It's not really clear. They're looking for admiration, but that's not really the same as that other type of lying I was talking about. They're telling the lie so you'll believe it, and that'll put them on a pedestal. But they're also telling the lie at some level so that they will believe it. Over time, I really do believe that narcissistic lies, at least to the narcissist, are perceived as true. And again, these are all matters of degrees, right? They don't 100% believe it necessarily, although sometimes I think it does rise to that delusional level. Now, of course, that would be narcissism comorbid with something else. Which brings me to an important point. Even though I've pointed out that, in my opinion, self-deception seems to be at the core of narcissism, or at least it's a good symptom of narcissism. It's a good way to detect it, potentially. It could also point to a number of other disorders. I mentioned antisocial personality disorder, of course, borderline personality disorder, substance use disorder. It could be indicative of some sort of delusion, like we might see with schizophrenia or mania. So it's not so simple to say, well, if you see self-deception, you have found narcissism. It's just something that could point to narcissism. Whenever we take complex constructs and we try to reduce them, of course, we get inaccuracy. There's no simple way to detect all these complex constructs. I mentioned this earlier in the video. So this is just my idea, something I thought was interesting as I looked at the literature and looked at my experience and thought maybe self-deception is playing a part here. Now I know there's a lot of different opinions and sometimes strong opinions about narcissism. I would really look forward to reading comments about this if you would make a comment in that section of this video and start a dialogue about narcissism and how it's detected. Everybody has a different experience of narcissism because every narcissist is different, and everybody has a different ability in terms of detecting narcissism. Some people are really good at detecting narcissism, and other people can't see it no matter what happens. So I'd be interested to see what I imagine will be a wide variety, a lot of diversity of opinion. I hope you found this description of narcissism and what may indicate narcissism to be interesting. Thanks for watching.